Well, it is unbelievably cold.
No kidding, look at the snow.
God, we're out here in Sanpete County, Utah. We're just coming up from St. George, Utah, where it was not cold.
Well, it was.
Well, it was not like this.
Yes.
It wasn't snow. There are palm trees in St. George. St. George is pretty nice. But what we were doing in St. George was checking out a Proto 48 model railroad. Proto 48 is what you call a weird scale.
Oh, kidding. I'd never heard of it before.
I don't know, most people have not.
No.
But check this out, a Proto 48 model railroad in St. George, Utah. Jim Harper has modeled the Southern Pacific in the rather unusual scale or size of Proto 48. Proto 48 is actually O scale, but oddly enough, it's not O gauge. The gauge is proper for 4 feet 8.5 inches. Normally, O scale runs on the rather unusual and incorrect gauge of 5 feet. All of the scales in model railroading have been tweaked a bit to, well, improve performance, and a lot of times accuracy has been sacrificed. The idea behind Proto 48 is to make everything as absolutely accurate as humanly possible.
This railroad was started in 1989 in Reno, Nevada, in my 3-car garage. Originally, Cliff Grant and several other people were doing fine scale in O scale. They didn't like the 5-foot gauge that O gauge runs on. They wanted it to be 4 feet 8.5 inches, and they wanted to use a full-scale wheel, which obviously the NMRA standards are not scale wheels, wide tread and deep flanges. But in 1986, we had the O-Scale National Convention in Burlingame, California, and we got together there with the manufacturers, such as Tom Marsh from Overland and Raoul Martin from Northwest Short Lines, and they asked us, what would you guys like to have in the way of merchandise for Proto 48? We had not designated it Proto 48 at that time. It was called quarter AAR fine scale. And so we decided at that time we would designate it Proto 48. The reason for that, it tells you what the scale and the gauge is. The scale is 48 to the foot, 1/4 of an inch to the foot, and the scale is prototypical. So if you're going to do prototypical track, whether it's 2-foot gauge, 3-foot gauge, or 4 feet 8.5 inches, that's what it should be to match the scale that you're using. And then there was a gentleman in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, by the name of Steve Grabowski. He started making Proto 48 wheels, and they had some machine shops there that did the work for him, and he and his father-in-law put together a press so that they could make up the wheel sets. They are exact AAR cross-section wheels, exactly the same as the prototype, only scaled down to 48 to the foot. That was the start. I bought 5,000 axles from my hobby shop in Reno, High Sierra Models. I sold those out relatively quickly. I had track gauges made by Precision Scale with a Proto 48 true gauge for O scale, and sold those. I bought another 8,000 axles from Steve Grabowski and selling those out. And then after that, Norm Buckhart of Protocraft now is selling those same wheels, and his first order with Grabowski was 18,000 wheel sets, axle sets, and he's probably sold most of those now. So there is a pretty good following for Proto 48 out there. I realized right off that I was not going to have to hand file and cut and fit all the turnouts, so I had masters made for frogs, guardrails, and points. And I started selling those after I decided to do it for myself. I said, hey, if I'm going to do it for myself, I may as well make these available for anybody that's interested. So I have sold those parts now ever since about 1990. All of my track is hand-laid, 4 spikes in every tie, wooden ties, mostly from the right-o way, but others are available. And I use the plastic tie plates under there after I paint them, so I have a completely prototypical track. And I actually do a track weighing clinic at the O-scale meets and at some of the conventions. I've done clinics on the handling track using the procedures that I use. So that's been a fun part of it for me, and I'm still selling those parts.
Jim's railroad is based on the Southern Pacific in and around Sacramento and the Bay Area. The railroad has been painstakingly constructed. It was started in Reno and then chopped up into pieces and moved here to St. George. No mean feat. While the track work here is really mind-boggling, everything here is just amazing. The scenery, the locomotives, the rolling stock, it's all just super first-rate. Jim also painted all of the backdrops, many of which show either the Pacific Ocean or the Sacramento River or the Sierra Nevada mountains. There are amazing structures as well, and lots of fun little detail areas around the railroad, and amazing water work in the canyon. There's also an electric line, which is typical of the area around Sacramento. Fun to see that modeled here with the overhead wire. And because Jim is doing transition era, there's the odd diesel locomotive running around as well, although it seems Jim does prefer steam. And as always, the layout takes on a whole new look after the shadows fall. Well, Jim has certainly constructed quite a railroad here in his house in St. George, and he's become quite an advocate for Proto 48. And there are Proto versions of other scales, particularly Proto 87, which is a prototype version of HO scale. In this case, the gauge is pretty much the same, but the wheel profile and flanges and so on are brought much, much closer to accurate standards. The evolution of model railroading really started off with toy trains, and scale consideration was just never all that big with toy trains. But over the years, the modelers have desired to make it more and more and more accurate, ending here with Proto 48, which is as accurate as humanly possible. So that is a Proto 48.
Oh my.
Isn't that
I
cool?
was like impressed. I mean, very impressed.
You get used to seeing O scale and it looks pretty
Right.
impressive, but then you see this Proto 48 and it's so much more detailed and
No kidding.
it just looks so much more right.
And this gentleman has just gone all out on this display. I mean, his layout is just magnificent. It's amazing.
It runs great, it looks great,
Right.
just unbelievable.
Unbelievable.
Now I am going to put up on the channel a rant because a lot of people, would have no idea what Proto 48 is.
Right.
And so on Wednesday, I'm going to put up a rant about scales and gauges and how that whole thing came into being. Because you may know that there are a million of these weird sizes. There's TT, N, Z, NN3, HON 24. Just
too many.
Too many to even mention.
A lot.
We're going to mention them all on Wednesday. And the reason I'm saving it for Wednesday is, in this particular case, you will find it boring, but hopefully you will also find it interesting.
Oh no.
But you can't talk about all of this crap without it just becoming boring
Oh gee.
beyond all belief.
Okay.
So I'm going to put it up a really boring thing on Wednesday about it.
Get out the coffee.
Get out the coffee. But it should be fun, and it'll help explain where the heck Proto 48 comes from and all of that sort of thing. If you haven't been over to the web channel, get on over to the web channel. That's toymantelevision.com. And you can get there through the link on the channel, which is Guy's Hobby Shop, and that'll take you to guyshobbyshop.com, which is a hobby shop and a rat fink store and stuff, which we don't own or have anything to do with. Those are just friends, and you can buy stuff there and do stuff there, and it's all very well and good. Also, if you have not subscribed to the channel, I don't know why you would not subscribe. So that's the blue button that's popping in about now, and it says subscribe. Click on it. You are subscribed.
Right.
Takes you to the channel. One-stop shopping. Piece of cake.
Right.
Well, we're not sure how you found this video on the internet. We hope you didn't find it boring. And we will see you here again in 1 week with some more significant screwing around. We'll see you then. Bye-bye.
Bye.